power, superpower.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is Plattym3.
And this is Yangus the Legendary Bandit. And hold on, before we get started here, Platty, is it just me or did you sound different the last time we had one of these SideQuest episodes?
Yeah, there was like a frog in my throat the whole time.
That's weird.
So.
You sounded really familiar, but at the same time really different too.
Yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff going on. The moon was like in the 7th house of Mars or whatever. Yeah, not really into that astronomy stuff.
Well, you know, that 7th moon thing, you got to watch out for that, man.
Yeah, especially when it turns into a blood moon on a harvest night.
Oh, man.
Get a harvest moon. Ba-dum-bum. Yeah, you didn't see where I was going with that one.
No, well, honestly, when you said the blood moon thing, I was thinking, oh, maybe he's going to make a Bloodborne joke, but no. I like the way you went with it better, though.
All right, so are we ready to do this, Yangus?
Well, what do you mean, Platty? I mean, you did the intro tonight, so, you know, we're doing this.
Yeah, but you were kind of on the fence with a little bit. Did you finally come up with a game to talk about?
Yeah, I'll wing it.
Okay, but didn't you check out that list I sent for some ideas?
I mean, yeah, no. I really didn't bother. You know, I'll just wing it. It'll be fine.
Well, I mean, let me just take a look. Quick look here. We'll see what we can do about some Super Nintendo RPGs that you could talk about. I think you played the Twisted Tales of Spike McFang, right?
Spike who now?
Either of the Lufia games?
Nope, not yet.
Secret of Mana?
Well, Pendy's talking about that one, so I'm not going to take it from him.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to him. I mean, I don't want to take that away. I don't want to steal his thunder. How about Secret of Evermore?
No.
Secret of the Stars?
Nope.
Secret of the Snuffleupagus?
Now you're just making stuff up. Come on, man.
All right. Let me get back to this Super Nintendo definitive RPG list. Zelda, A Link to the Past.
That's not even an RPG. What are you talking about?
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, hey, Final Fantasy IV.
I mean, we covered that in the very first SideQuest episode, which you, the audience, should go listen to right now if you haven't already.
We got Drippy here tonight, so we could do Earthbound?
No. We'll cover that in a future episode.
Well, damn it, Yangus. I don't know what else to suggest.
Look, no worries, Platty. I'll just wing it and probably wing it long enough that you have to tell me to shut up in the chat. You know, like how it always happens.
Come on, I would never.
Yeah, you would never do that, right?
Never.
Well, helping me wing it tonight, we've brought back a trio of former guests. Please welcome back Bururian.
What's shaking?
DrippySlimeStar.
Hey, how are you?
And Pendy.
Hello.
All right, we'll get to our normal format of we're all gonna have a game or two to talk about. And just kind of go through some of our favorite Super Nintendo RPGs tonight. As you hear, we actually had a little bit of hard time picking some of these because some of the more popular ones we've already covered once or twice. So we didn't want to recover some of the same old ground, and we do have some other ideas in mind, like having a whole mother episode. So we don't want to go into Earthbound tonight. So we'll cover some of our favorite ones tonight, and if there's some that you like better, they might be in a former episode. And if there's other ones you like better, they might be in an upcoming episode. So we'll just take it like it is. And Pendy, since you have the most luxurious notes, should I put it that way? Luxurious?
Well, you don't like my little book?
At least the ones that I'm privy to, because I know Drippy, you've got your reams of notes yourself.
I got my old-fashioned notes.
I was gonna say he actually wrote something out. He used his whole hand, not just fingertips.
Yeah.
But Pendy, we'll start with you tonight. Go ahead and pick one of the games that you'd like to talk about.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Chrono Trigger, one of my favorite games of all time. So Chrono Trigger came out for the Super Nintendo in Japan way back in 1995, and in North America in August of 1995. This was for the Super, like I said, for the Super Nintendo, or the SNES, as I guess Yangus likes to call it sometimes.
God, no, please.
But anyways, there's been
I jump between all three. Give me a break.
Doesn't discriminate.
But anyways, subsequent ports and remasters were brought to the PlayStation 1, the DS, mobile, various mobile platforms, and Windows more recently. I've only ever played the Super Nintendo and the DS versions so far. Have you guys played the I heard there was like an issue with like the mobile version at some point that they had to fix. Anyone aware of that?
I
didn't
know
look into
the
that.
Steam version was having a lot of problems, but they eventually patched it and stuff like that to make it much more, I don't know, tolerable or better.
Yeah,
but I think, I think that was based off the mobile as well.
Oh no,
so I'm
yeah,
not sure.
the Steam version was a straight mobile port, and that's why it was having issues initially. They did that great patch for it. That kind of fixed it up.
So just buggy. I got it. Cool. But yeah, it's by far one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo. I love everything about this game. The characters, the settings, the time travel elements, the multiple endings. It's fan-fucking-tastic. It's often on or near the top of people's best RPGs of all time, and for good reason. In my opinion, the battles are so much fun. All the enemies are on screen, which was rare for Super Nintendo RPGs back in that time, and you seamlessly transition from exploring to fighting. The endless, inventive ways monsters will appear or will be seen hanging about is a lot of fun. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sure some of the encounters that they put in Dragon Quest XI were probably influenced by the way they were done in Chrono Trigger, the way that enemies will pop out or be hanging around in that game as well. Magic and special physical attacks are called techs in this game, and some special attacks will hit a certain area or kind of spread through a line across the screen in a certain direction, but the enemies will constantly move around, so getting them lined up just right adds strategy to what you can unleash. And there are certain techs that are joint techs between certain characters. So you can do a double attack with two characters, or there's even techs that use all three characters that you're using at the time all at once, which is a lot of fun. And it's great. So the game uses a traditional like Final Fantasy type active time battle system, but it does have an optional wait mode that you can choose instead, which is what I usually do because I'm a big wimp. I like to have my games a little bit more turn-based than active. That's just me. I've always done that with Final Fantasy games.
You don't want the boss ripping through you when you're trying to go through a menu.
No, it's like I'm trying to find the potion, and then he's like just attacking me. I'm slow. Give me some time.
I completely get that.
But this game also has some of my favorite RPG characters, or just characters in general, whether it be the swashbuckling frog, the robot from the future simply named Robo, or the anti-hero Magus. Their personalities and antics are always enjoyable to watch as well. Their character designs are great too. And speaking of that, guess who is the character designer in this game? Why, it's none other than Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame.
What? I've heard that name.
Yeah, I know. I think he's also the character designer for some other small series. I think Dragon Warrior, maybe Dragon Quest. I guess is what it's called or something.
I think you mean Blue Dragon. It's got to be Blue Dragon.
That's right. That's right.
That was it.
Maybe there was a dragon in there somewhere.
Yep.
The dragon was inside you.
But that is part of why this game is so great. The greatest minds of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest came together to make this game. Not only do you have Toriyama, who did all the character designs, mech designs, even designed like how all the different eras looked, backgrounds and such, but you also have Yuji Horii and Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. And after I've said that name, I do want to put a disclaimer for the rest of this podcast that I will probably slaughter a bunch of names. So just be warned. I may be some cringy pronunciations. But the three, and I didn't know this before I did the research, the three of them were actually inspired to make this game after a trip to the good old USA back in 1992 when they were researching computer graphics. So I thought that was really cool. Huh. I had no idea.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. The wonderful soundtrack was mostly composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, with some contributions by famed Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu. This game has 12 different endings you can enjoy. Once you beat the game once, you can go into New Game Plus mode. This game is not designed just to be beat once. Everything carries over into New Game Plus, and the endings vary depending on how and when you beat the final boss in the timeline that they set up. There's even a bonus ending where you get to meet the creators of the game. So you get to go see Yuji Horii and Akira Toriyama and say, "What's up, dude?" You can meet them in the game. It's great. How cool is that?
What? Did they have little sprites?
Yeah, they had little sprites.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's called the Dream Team ending for the game.
Yep, it's supposed
Oh
to
my
be the
God.
most
Now
difficult
I
one
wanna-
to do.
And now I want to do a perler bead of Yuji Horii.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't think about that.
Yeah, just go
Yeah.
look up a sprite sheet. You'll find them.
I'll be doing that right now.
There you go. But this is one of my favorite Super Nintendo games, and I highly recommend it to any RPG fan. What do you guys think of this game, for those who have played it?
So I am a big-time Yasunori Mitsuda fan, so I absolutely love the work he did on this game.
Such a great composer.
And a fun little fact is that, who was it? Uematsu kind of helped out with a couple of tracks. I think it was because Mitsuda had gotten sick at the time, so Uematsu stepped in to help him out.
Yeah, I heard that story too.
He only did like 2 or 3 of the songs on the Chrono Trigger soundtrack. I love the music for it so much. I own just about every soundtrack for those games. I even have that orchestral soundtrack Square Enix put out a couple of years ago. That has like 3 CDs and stuff. Anyways, if there's a version of this game, I have played it, and I have played it multiple times. I even sat through the PS1 version, which is probably the worst of the bunch. If not just for the load times on.
That's what I heard.
It's really strange because Final Fantasy IV had no issues with loading, but for some reason Chrono Trigger, whenever you got into a random battle, you'd get hit with an anywhere from like 10 to 20 second load time for the battle. And final boss was awful, especially when he started doing time phase shifts during the battle, because you would get stuck in a loading screen every time he would change to a different time.
Oh.
It was not great. But, you know, the addition of all of the cutscenes, the extra content that they stuck in there, you know, that eventually came to the DS version, was enough to make me look around it.
Yeah, the DS version was a lot of fun. I liked how they added all that to it, and they didn't have any of the issues that the PS1 version had.
And they retranslated the entire script. I know that's divisive for some people. Some people like the old, what's his name, Ted Woolsey translation.
Oh, he did that one?
But,
that makes sense. He was doing a lot of them back then.
Yeah, so he did the original translation, and then when it came to the DS in 2007 or so, they did a full retranslation for it.
Yeah, I didn't put it in my notes. I wasn't going to talk about it, but since you brought it up, he also did Secret of Mana, and they rushed it so much, supposedly to get it out for the holiday season, I guess. And he did it within like 2 weeks. He said it was horrible.
Wow.
He had to cut out a bunch of dialogue, and it was awful.
Wow. I had no idea on that.
I'm wondering if they retranslated it for the Switch compilation. I'd have to look that up.
That is that's a good point. Like the PS4 Switch remake or that they did.
No, not the full blown remake, but the just the compilation of the straight ports of the first three.
I see.
Seiken and Setsu games.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
That would be something to look into for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I actually played the DS version after giving the PS1 version a try way back when on the Vita, and I'm not a huge fan of the game. I kind of had a up and down relationship with it. Started pretty great, got a little boring, and I did get to the final boss, but I didn't want to do the side quests to try to level up and stuff like that, so I actually left off at the final boss. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I wasn't fighting enough. Maybe I was a little bit under leveled and stuff, but it didn't really stick to me. I mean, I definitely appreciated what it does, and I've considered going back to it, but I sold my DS copy, and I think I bought that for like $50 to begin with, so I'm really not ready to go back and try it again. Maybe the Steam version. I got a code for that during the Square Enix bundle last year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I mean, I can definitely appreciate it, but I think the battles were definitely my favorite part. I also had it where it pauses when you choose, you know, an item and stuff like that, because I don't need to be that anxious while I'm playing an RPG. You know, so yeah, I enjoyed what I played of it. I just couldn't bring myself to finish it.
Yeah, the battles are very dynamic. That's one of the better parts about the game.
So I did play this. I played this back in the early 2000s. Never played it when it came out, and I think I want to say I just emulated the Super Nintendo version at the time. I think this was before I had my lovely DS card that I could just emulate on the DS. And I don't know. To me, it was just another game. It didn't stick out. Like, I hear people talk about it now, and I'm like, oh, I mean, this is, and I think it was even before I joined the den, so I didn't even Or no, it would have been afterwards. So I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't discussed much on the Den, but I feel like I hear about it way more now than I did back then. But then again, I wasn't anywhere but the Den back in 2003, 2004. It was okay, but like I was just enamored with the PS2 by then and everything else, and I was like, nah, going back to this was all right.
Oh, admittedly, like people in my age group, there is so much like nostalgic hype about it all the time.
Yep.
So I understand that for sure.
Oh yeah,
I did
I'm
like.
Sorry, when did you say you tried to play this? Like mid 2000s?
Yeah, 2003, 4, 5.
Yeah, so that was a couple of years after the PlayStation 1 version came out. So I guess it was kind of an influx of new players who either didn't have the Super Nintendo or couldn't get a copy, because even by that point, a copy of Chrono Trigger was like higher than average on used, and used games back then used to be really, really low compared to now.
Oh yeah.
So
I did really like the character Ayla.
Oh, she's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was because, and I like right away, I was like, wait a minute, this is a blonde cave girl, and her name's Ayla. This is ripped right out of a series of books that I was listening to at the time. There was a series of books called Earth's Children, and this lady, Jean Auel, Auel, wrote it. And I mean, at the time, I was just trying to find anything really long to listen to, books on tape at the library. And I was like, oh, wow, look, there's like 6 books, and each of them have like 30 cassettes apiece. So I was like, this will get me through the summer of just sitting at home playing video games and listening to stuff. So, I mean, it's probably not the most wide-read series, but it was kind of popular back in the 90s and 80s. She wrote it for a long time, and it got kind of worldwide published because she'd done so much research on actual cave people and everything. And yeah, I was even looking right now at the Chronopedia Wikipedia site, and right in there, right, it's listed on her page as she's probably an allusion to Ayla in that, because it's a tall, light blonde-haired, blue-eyed, prehistoric girl.
Nice.
That's kind of cool.
And what's fun about this game is that, like, I didn't know going into it that it was like, the Dragon Quest and the Final Fantasy people getting together on it. I had no idea. I didn't find that out until like way afterwards, and I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. It's just
yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, this with this game, I heard about it before I played it when I was in. I think it must have been like late elementary, early junior high. The DS version came out in, I believe, 2008, if I remember right, and I got that one for Christmas that year. And I did enjoy the game a lot, and I think what it was for me is that I burned myself out by doing all the replays and getting all the different endings, because the DS version will let you track like what endings you've gotten depending on when you beat the game and when you beat Lavos. But
Right.
I mean, I still really do like a lot of things about Chrono Trigger, and if I replayed it now, I probably would really enjoy it again. But it was one of those things where I think I just replayed it a bit too much, that I kind of got burnt out on it. And I personally enjoyed Chrono Trigger, or excuse me, I enjoyed Chrono Cross just a little bit more when I played that the first time that I did Chrono Trigger. But I still think Chrono Trigger...
It is.
I just like
Twinsy, I'm right there with you.
But I still think that Chrono Trigger is a really well-made game, because I do think it had some really good characters, some great music, and environments that you went to. Like there is a lot of really great stuff to this game.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the scenario writers for the game was Maso Kato of famed Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yes,
So-
he was involved. In fact, in the article that I read about it, it said that Kato and Yuji Horii would take long meetings with each other to kind of hash out the story as they went.
Oh, and also, the added extra ending for the DS version that connects Chrono Cross to Chrono Trigger,
That's right.
which
Yeah,
was not
right.
in any previous version.
And what's funny is that I just remembered this Kato was kind of, he didn't want to do the time travel thing at first. He was against the idea, but they convinced him to go with it, and it became what it is now.
That's interesting. I will say that I did like, even though I hadn't played Chrono Cross at the time, I did enjoy that new bonus boss that they added into the DS one, because that was a cool discovery to find where, you beat the game, and if you do New Game Plus, the old man at the end of time is like, hey, listen, there's this weird, energy coming off from this point of, the space-time continuum. You might want to go check it out, but I also have a really bad feeling about it. And it was like, oh, cool, I wonder if it's, something new content-wise. And sure enough, it was. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I will say that the one thing I don't like about the DS remake is those new dungeons that open up. I forget what they're called. They're the ones that are open up via those green portals that show up after the black. Oh, what's that? The black omen rises into the sky.
Yeah. Honestly, I can take those or leave those.
My biggest complaint was how much you had to run back and forth between them. I did them once when I played the game, and I never did them again because I just hated going through them. But I liked the other dungeons that open up once you've beaten the game, that open up from those like black and purple portals. Those are fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so I'm the opposite on Chrono Cross. I won't get into it too much because it's the Super Nintendo episode, but I just couldn't stand the game. I never finished it. I got and I wasn't like, oh my god, they didn't use Dragon Quest guy, mad. No, I just I played it with open mind, and I just got bored. Like I got like maybe halfway through the game, and I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do it anymore. I'm just too bored. It just wasn't my thing. But yeah, I still was disappointed that they decided to go Chrono Cross instead of like Chrono Trigger 2 and bring back Yuji Horii and be like, hey, let's do another compilation of our powers combined. And they decided to kind of go off with another direction. So I was like, okay, whatever.
I almost think that's why we haven't ever seen another Chrono game for such a long time, other than like these, ports/remakes of Chrono Trigger. I think that maybe they just don't want to try and, mess with, what works so well about the original.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'd be cool if they did, don't get me wrong, but it almost seems like it's more of an out of respect thing that they don't try and do something else with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was one of those lightning in a bottle situations, just like with Super Mario RPG, which I know someone's going to go over later, where it's just like a perfect combination at the right time of the right people, and just made for such a great game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Speaking of perfect combination, how about my twinsy? Why don't you go number 2?
Well, I don't need to go to the bathroom right now, Platty, but...
Well,
I'm
late at night, I don't know.
That's a terrible joke, I apologize.
I heard it when I said it. I was like, oh boy.
I had to go with the joke just because you said that. Okay.
You had to go.
Yeah. All right.
You gotta go.
Gotta go right now. All right. So for the game that I decided to wing it with, I ended up going with Dragon Quest III via its Super Famicom remake. This was one that released, I believed, in either 1994 or 1995, if I remember right. And this remake was based on the engine that they used for Dragon Quest VI. So if you play the Super Famicom version, or the original version, I guess, of Dragon Quest VI, and you then play this remake of Dragon Quest III, you'll see some similarities with how characters move and the environments and things like that. Anyway, this remake... obviously, it's a remake of Dragon Quest III, which originally came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System / Famicom in the late 80s. It was a real big hit in Japan. Don't know how it did over here, but, it's still one of the most well-regarded games in the series, no matter where you are. And this remake added in quite a lot of new things to Dragon Quest III. So some of the new features included the Thief class, the introduction of Pachisi / TNT boards, monster animations, which I believe originally were first in Dragon Quest VI, but this remake added them into Dragon Quest III. There is the personality system that affects the growth of your character stats, be it their HP, their strength, and what have you. There are brand new cutscenes, such as the opening prologue cutscene that'll show the adventures of Ortega before his big showdown at the volcano that's near Barmos' castle. So there is a new and very difficult post-game with a bonus boss that seems like a big old shout-out to Dragon Ball Z, and there are now mini-medals you can find all around the world. This version of Dragon Quest III became the basis for future versions of Dragon Quest III, although current iterations of the game, such as on mobile and Switch, lack some of the new features that were introduced in the Super Nintendo version, such as like the monster animations and the Pachisi tracks. The remake also has a very good fan translation that's available online. This is the version that I played a lot of in college. specifically this fan translation of Dragon Quest III. And it's my personal favorite way to experience Dragon Quest III because I feel like it really does a great job showcasing the world and the music and all of the different elements that make Dragon Quest III, such a memorable game. It's also the one game that I actually own a reproduction cart of. Normally I don't buy carts like that or do a lot of emulation or anything like that, but since I enjoyed this fan translation of Dragon Quest III so much from the Super Nintendo version, I was able to get a copy that, even though it unfortunately has a bit of a glitch when you open up menus to try and read item descriptions, it's a good thing I at least know how to play the game and know what stuff does, so I don't really need that too badly. But
yep, my reproduction cartridge has the same exact issue.
But if you are either new to Dragon Quest or if you have, played all the games but you're just looking for a new way to experience Dragon Quest 3, and if you've played, say, the current Switch version or the mobile version that's out right now, I would recommend that you give this fan translation a try because it has a lot of really cool features and some really nice details, and I think that this is this is how, in my opinion, you remake a game. You take what works so well about the original, you give it a really nice graphical and musical overhaul, and I just think that this remake is, one of the best efforts for a Dragon Quest remake that we've ever seen, just in my opinion. Have you guys played this version of the game at all?
I have a reproduction cartridge.
You guys bought it from the same person.
Probably.
Same glitch.
Maybe.
That's all right, because I'm looking for reproduction copies right now because I had played it with the fan translation on my PC. I didn't get too far into it just because I didn't feel like playing a really long RPG sitting on my computer chair. But yeah, I mean, like you said, that's the way you do a remake. I think it's, just the graphics alone. 3 is my favorite, so I kind of always pump that one up in my brain anyways. Anything 3 is good. But I mean, it looks good, it plays good, and I enjoyed my time with that specific version that I played of it.
Yeah, and 6 was one of the best looking Super Nintendo games that was ever put out for it. Well, I guess Super Famicom. And using that same graphical engine, oh man, 3 just looked fantastic. Like the ending blows you away for its time, and just the whole game just looks beautiful. And the monster animations are fantastic. Like that was the start of when they started doing 6. That era was that start of the monster animations, and that's why so many people are so disappointed in when they did the mobile remake, because it didn't have a lot of that. Because even the Game Boy Color version, even though it was graphically inferior, it still had monster animations and stuff like that. Even that version did it. But then when they went to mobile, they lost the monster animations, like you said. They lost one of the bonus dungeons that they added to the GBC version. The Pachisi tracks were gone.
Yep.
So.
So the reason why that is too, and I think I just said this to Drippy not that long ago, the reason why the Switch/current mobile version is like that is because Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and Dragon Quest 3, they're all based on mobile versions that released in Japan in the early 2000s.
That is correct.
So that's why a lot of that stuff is unfortunately missing, because they were just like, oh, let's just take the info and data and all that from this version of the game, and we'll just bring it over to current stuff. And it unfortunately shows, because you are missing quite a bit of content, and I'm really surprised that Yuji Horii was okay with that.
Yeah, because they did 1, 2, and 3 from scratch to make those mobile versions, whereas 4, 5, and 6 were more ports with a couple of editions of the DS remakes. So yeah.
Yep. But what was I going to say? You talking about what they were able to do with the graphics, Pendy. One of my favorite cutscenes that they tweaked and revamped in the Super Nintendo version is after you've defeated Baramos and you return back to Aleahan and you go to the king and talk to him. It's oh, you saved the world from the evil darkness. The world is saved, hooray. Well, then you see all the trumpeters start playing the Dragon Quest Overture. Then you see these really cool lightning effects, strike down every single one of those trumpet players and the guards that are in the throne room. And you get that really cool overhead shot of this foggy apparition version of Zoma looking down at the party and talking to you I am Baramos's master. You have to come and defeat me now, otherwise I'll take over the world. Really disappoints me with the Switch/mobile version that even though they have the guards just randomly disappear and you just have the screen go black while Zoma talks to you. You lose so many of the cool effects that were in the Super Nintendo version, and it ruins that scene, in my opinion, because it was so cool. It was so cool.
Yeah, and just as an aside, like, why do you have to pick on the band geeks? I don't get it.
All right. Well, if we're done with that, we'll move right along. Drippy, you want to do one of yours?
Yeah, I can do a short one, just because, I mean, I haven't really played a lot of Super Nintendo games, but when I do, I try to make sure they're an RPG. So my first one is Actraiser. So it was released by Enix in 1990 in Japan, 91 in the US, and 93 in Europe. And it has a Greek mythology setting, and it's a really interesting game because it's a 2D platformer, hack and slash kind of thing, as well as a town building light kind of RTS thing. So the first phase, there's only, I think there's 6 worlds, and I got to the 4th or 5th. And the first phase. Well, I guess there's 3 phases. You start in 2D, and you do a basic platforming level. There's usually a boss at the end, and then you go into this town building part, and you control an angel kind of thing, and it feels kind of clunky to me. The hitboxes are really narrow, and you're trying to basically control this angel around this field, shooting demons, and then building roads to make the townspeople seal up the portals that these demons are coming from. So I think it's kind of shallow because there's not much to it. It's not like SimCity or City Skylines where you customize it, and the way you customize it really affects what happens. It's basically get the people from the middle of the town up to the portals and get on with your life. So I enjoyed the 2D a lot more than the RTS, I guess you could say. It's an overall fun game. I would definitely play it again if it was on the SNES app. But I think it's a really interesting game, especially for the Super Nintendo. They made a sequel that I guess is a lot more platformer heavy. And I know a couple years ago, I think it was Saga maybe, that tried to make kind of a spiritual successor, and I guess it was just god awful. So really unique formula that you don't see a lot in games, but I really enjoyed what I played of it.
I absolutely love this game, Actraiser. It's so good. This is
That's
one of those
good to
games.
hear, yeah, because I really hadn't heard much of it. I mean, I had always heard the name, but then when I actually looked into what it was, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I bought a physical cartridge, and it was fun.
Yeah. This was one of those ones that I believe it was in college. I went to a local game store that was in the town that I lived at when I was in college, and I was looking for some Super Nintendo / PS1 games at the time, and they ended up having this game Actraiser on the shelf, and I'm like, well, I'll give this one a try. I've heard about this one every now and then, and I ended up getting that copy from that store that they had. It was in good condition, and I ended up playing it for, I think it was over that summer, like right after I got it, and it was, it's a very different experience of a game, but honestly, I think that's what makes it so cool, because like I really enjoyed the overhead view of like you watching over the people as this godlike figure, helping protect their town and helping them, listening to their problems and, helping, the little angel guy shoots off the demons. They eventually, like the people figure out that, we need to, rely on ourselves instead of relying on this, this god of the world that we keep praying to.
Yeah, because you can kind of use, I think they call them miracles, where like if you need to clear out trees to make it so the path can continue, you like call down like fire and stuff like that, and that was a really cool thing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was one that I found the side-scrolling parts a little bit weird to control at first, but you get used to it after those first few stages of it. The last part of the side-scrolling stuff where you have to do like the gauntlet against all the bosses from the game, that part was actually really difficult because you have to fight them like one after another, and then you have to fight the final boss right after that. And I don't remember if there's save points in between or not. But,
I'm sure there wasn't, yeah. I think the last boss I fought was on a ship or something like that. But the bosses were interesting. The magic was pretty cool as well. I remember there was kind of like was kind of like a fire spell kind of shot, you know, on a path and stuff like that, and then you could call down like basically a screen clearing magic. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's a little tough when you're first starting out. You don't really know how far your jump is going to go. You're not really sure how wide your swing of your sword is. But the character moves really well, and the levels are fun to progress through.
Yeah, that is true. Like, I do remember the screen clearing. It's been a few years since I've played it, but I remember always loving to use that screen clearing nuke spell. That was just so much fun to watch that, especially, you know, this was early Super Nintendo, I believe. I think it was either 1991 or 1992. I can't remember the exact year, but I remember that being really impressed with just how, you know, how graphically the game looked.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I particularly like about this game, because it just happens to have one of my favorite composers, is Yuzo Koshiro. He wrote the soundtrack for this game.
Soundtrack's really good. I really enjoy it, especially the song when you're going into a portal and it kind of builds up. You know, like you're getting hyped up to go into this portal. You're gonna kill some demons and stuff like that. Yeah, I enjoy the music as well.
Yeah, there's some really great tracks from this game, and if you do enjoy this game's soundtrack, then I would really recommend checking out the Symphonic Suite soundtrack of the game that's up on YouTube. Last I checked, it was still on YouTube. There's unfortunately, like, Yuzo Koshiro usually re-releases his stuff. Like, if you look on iTunes now, there's actually quite a few of his video game soundtracks on there that are available to purchase. But for some, including the Super Nintendo version of Actraiser soundtrack, and actually the arcade version of Actraiser soundtrack as well. But for some reason, this symphonic version of the soundtrack has never gotten a re-release, which is such a shame because it has some really great renditions. And we had this discussion on a Slime Time episode that is yet to show up, or yet to be posted, but we were discussing like who would be a good composer to possibly take over for Sugiyama when the time comes for it, and I specifically said Yuzo Koshiro, specifically because of this game soundtrack and how the symphonic version of it turned out, because Koshiro did the symphonic compositions himself. Like, he transferred, it from the Super Nintendo sound chip, was able to create the full score for the orchestra that played this symphonic suite of the game soundtrack. So like, it turned out damn good.
Yeah, it looks like there's a playlist up of the Symphonic Suite. There's only 10 songs, so it looks like it's actually a pretty limited soundtrack, but I mean, from what I heard, it was good. And there's actually a video of somebody playing it on vinyl, so I guess they released a vinyl version of the OST. Yeah. Which is really cool to see.
Yeah, it's one of those soundtracks where they like take two of the songs from like different points of the game and they'll put it into one track. So that's why it's kind of shorter track wise. But for what music is in the game, it's one of those things that I think is one of the strengths of Koshiro as a composer as well. He doesn't like overly write music. Like, he doesn't make like just like 50, 60 songs for a game. Like, he'll create a handful of like 20 to 30 songs that really work throughout the entire experience. And so that's why I think is one of his strengths as a composer. But I could talk about him all day, so I'll move on from that.
Wasn't this an Enix game?
Yes.
Yes.
It was, hold on. Because I think it was an Enix game, and I'm guessing probably Nintendo published.
Yeah, Enix released it in Japan in 1990, in the US in 91. So yeah, Enix.
I'm guessing Nintendo must have published this one in North America, because I'm guessing Enix kind of packed up and had moved on by that point.
Yeah, moved on to Square.
Enix they published the game over here.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah,
my
published
copy
by
says
Enix, developed by Quintet. Quintet, I know, had quite a few Super Nintendo. They talk about Quintet games. There's a YouTuber I watch.
Quintet was the developer in Japan.
Oh, it must have been before Enix quit America for a while. Okay.
Yeah.
No, Enix quit America around Dragon Warrior 7, I believe, which was
they stayed through the 90s.
No, the first time, because they went away twice.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
That's why we didn't get Dragon Quest V and Dragon Quest 6. Well, Dragon Quest anything.
Oh,
because
see.
Enix of America, they folded and they decided to give up. So most of the Super Nintendo games that were Enix properties were published by somebody else, because they just did not exist. That's why we had that dark age in the Super Nintendo era of just no Dragon Quest games. So that's why
I did not know about that.
That's what I was curious about.
Okay.
Dark times for Super Nintendo owners back then. I remember I bought a Super Nintendo thinking like, oh, more Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior games, because I bought in 3 and 4 and played 2 and 1, and then just nothing. They even had like a Nintendo Power preview for Dragon Quest V before Enix decided like, nope, we're pulling chalks, we're out of here. Sorry, bye. So that sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the developer is Quintet, and some of their other games, Actraiser was their first. They went on to make Soul Blazer, Actraiser 2, Illusion of Gaia, Robotrek, and Terranigma. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a YouTuber I watched, Super Derek RPGs, and he goes into, the Quintet games that were really, a lot of people talk about them when they talk about Super Nintendo games. Especially Actraiser and whatnot. So they seem to be a pretty good developer. But yeah, it looks like Enix published all of those.
Yeah, I always heard Quintet was a good publisher, but they didn't do too many games. But I'm completely drawing a blank on whatever else they did.
Yeah,
Quintet
they stopped
was
in 2004. Solo Crisis, Code R, Planet Lakia, Brightest. Oh, Shenmue, actually.
Do you know about Terranigma, Bururian?
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they helped create that and the other games of that trilogy.
Did they not do Illusion of Gaia?
They did, yep. They did Illusion of Gaia in 93, then Terranigma, and then, Soul Blazer. So, yeah, that trilogy, I guess, in quotes. I guess a lot of people say it's kind of an unofficial trilogy, right? Or
I've heard that.
Really sure.
I've heard that term being tossed around, too, like an unofficial trilogy. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, before I got booted there, what I was going to say is that Terranigma is part of that unofficial trilogy you guys were just mentioning as I joined back in. So, so yes, they did have quite a few Super Nintendo games, and they're pretty good RPGs too, especially if you like more action RPGs.
Oh, I love Illusion of Gaia. I mean,
yeah, I have a copy of Illusion of Gaia. I picked that up at a local store. I've yet to play it, but I mean, with that one being the first one, Robotrek was another one I wanted to try as well, but cartridges are pretty expensive like that, so really kind of hoping Square kind of works with Nintendo on the SNES app and releases some of these, old Quintet RPGs. Because I would totally play Actraiser. Like I said before, I would totally play Actraiser again if it came on that service.
All right, are we done with your quintet? A term I have heard plenty of times too. Yeah.
Don't you mean our quintet? Because isn't a quintet 5 people?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So you're part of it too, Platy. Don't be throwing us under the bus.
Well, that's it for this episode of Slime Time Sidetrack. We would like to thank our quintet of us.
And we were never heard from again.
We just finished talking about one NX game, and might as well go into another one. That was only published here by them. It wasn't developed by them. But much like Pendy said, lots of good Dragon Warrior games. Might as well pick up the Super Nintendo and keep the love going, because there'll probably be more there. And I kind of did the same. Got my Madden, played Madden for a year, 2 years, 3 years, forever, because nothing else came. So September 1993, NX did publish in the United States a game called The Seventh Saga. And I can't remember if I saw it somewhere or just happened to see it. And I know it was the logo. The little NX logo on it was like the thing that was like, ooh, I might like that. But I got it. I'm pretty sure I got it used. I got it a couple years later. I went off to college in 1996. And this and Madden 96 were the only games I brought with the Super Nintendo. I just didn't really play a lot of console games. I don't know why I didn't even consider the Final Fantasies at the time, even though I'd played the first one on my Nintendo. But the Seventh Saga was pretty much the, other than Final Fantasy 1 and Dragon Warrior 1 through 4, it was I can definitively say it was the 6th RPG I ever played. And I played it for quite a few years over and over again, because that's just what I had. It was made by a company called Produce. They had a couple other games that they did too. But what I thought was cool about this is, it was what I was looking for, turn-based battle system. But you could play as any of 7 different playable characters. And throughout the game, you could team up with one other character. And the whole point of the game was you were trying to get the 7 magical runes. So 7 playable characters, going to get 7 playable runes, and the runes were awesome when you got them because they basically each had like a spell associated with them. Like the fire rune would raise your attack, the water rune, the blue rune would heal you. So it was, you'd have them in your inventory and they'd be these free spells, free items that you could just use every round if you wanted. The pain in the butt part about this is some of these runes could get stolen by other players throughout. And this is where it became one bitch of a game. First off, the English version of this got an accidental difficulty tweak. Can't remember if it was on purpose or on accident, but in the process of bringing it over to the United States, the difficulty got ramped up. Some integer got changed, and the monsters either had a higher encounter rate or higher hit points. I can't remember the whole story behind that, but it was an issue that in the original Japanese release wasn't a problem. But over here, it kind of got a little bit infamous for being like that really hard-ass game. I honestly never found that to be the hard point. I just had some of my favorite characters, and sometimes you would talk to characters and they wouldn't join you. There was some mechanic behind that. Different parts of the game, different ones would have different chances of joining up with you. And there were some times where I'd have one partner, and I can't remember if you could switch partners or whatever. I'm trying to remember, what was the reason I would go talk to this person. But you'd get in battles with the other characters. And this is where the difficulty really was a pain in the butt, because they usually could beat you, and they would take your runes. It wasn't like game over or anything. And there were a couple times that I accidentally made a save, after I'd lost my runes to a character. And I know the runes would glow. There was a little, back then it was pretty unique or pretty new, but there was a little radar at the top of your screen whenever you were in somewhere where the enemies were. There was a little bubble up there, and you would see little red dots that would kind of show you where enemies were. It wasn't exactly very easy to dodge them or anything, but you could at least kind of prepare, be like, oh man, I'm about to get in a battle. It wasn't completely random, but oh my gosh, losing the runes middle of the game, later in the game, you'd have to go fight that person to get the runes back. And all of a sudden, all the strategy that you had, oh man, I got free healing spells, I got free defense up, free power up. You didn't have that. They had that. And it was
You're making this sound like a game I never want to touch.
Well, it's so weird listening to you describe this only because of what my other game's going to be talking like, and it's just making me think, gee, a game with the name Saga in it being odd and hard to play, that sounds familiar. That's
Yeah, I've made the joke more than once, this is the 7th Saga game, where they finally got things right.
So I was looking into it when I saw on the list, because I had never heard about it. And I really like the box art. It says, warning, this RPG may cause excitement, shock, disbelief, confusion, and complete enjoyment. Is that
well,
a true
some
statement,
of those points are right.
I would say all of those points are right, unfortunately and fortunately, throughout the game.
Well, the marketing must have worked then, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I probably beat this game 4 times, and it was a slog. It was a grind. And there were just times that I'd just have to power level the hell out of my guys. But I thought the characters were all pretty cool, coming from Dragon Quest and just one Final Fantasy where, it was just all basically your human characters in the first, in all the NES games. There was this guy that was like a fiery alien had spikes all over him. There was a 5,000-year-old robot. You had the old dwarf guy with an axe. You had the human knight, your typical well-rounded person. There was this one red guy that was like a power-hungry demon. Really good attack spells. He was good to pair up with people. But I do know, I remember him being difficult to recruit in some, or maybe he wouldn't join certain partners.
Difficult to
you could only go
too.
What?
Difficult to fight too if you had to fight the
Oh
master.
God, yeah, he was ridiculous. There's another elderly human cleric, and then there was an elf magic user too, to round out the 7. But I mean, those were all well, not all of them, but there were many that were like so radically different from Dragon Warrior 1 through 4 and Final Fantasy 1. And I was just like, this is so awesome. And it had that, I mentioned this, I think, a long time ago when we were talking, or actually maybe it was just the last episode, the Super Nintendo non-RPGs, but it had that Mode 7 graphic effect where you'd be walking along, and it would kind of look like you're walking along just a 2D flat world. And when you got into a battle, it would spin around, and suddenly the camera was behind your character, and you were standing on that terrain, and the monster just popped up out of the terrain. So the battle screens were pretty cool to see. And, I mean, it did feel a little limited coming from games where I'd been playing with 4 characters to now I only have 2, but it worked out all right. I again, it was difficult as hell. These days, this would be a game I would rage quit on, I'm sure. But back then, when it was the only thing that I had going, it was great. And I mean, it's a special thing in my heart because it was kind of my first Super Nintendo RPG. And like I said, the only one I brought to college. So for like 3.5 years, it was the only console one that I played. I was more into PC gaming at that point, a lot of city building stuff. But, you know, if I fired up the Super Nintendo, it was mainly for this.
You know, this is a game that I do want to try and play, but at the same time, I want to see if there's a way to play the original Japanese release with the, the English translation or like a fan retranslation, only because I know how infamously difficult this original version is.
Oh, I am sure there is a fan translation out there with the difficulty adjusted properly.
That's a good question. I wonder if someone ever did that. If they took the original Japanese version and then put a patch to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this game was super, super difficult. Like, I mean, because what you were talking about, Platty, with like fighting the other characters, like when you were partnered up with somebody, it wasn't like that bad. But when you were just like in the beginning, when you're one character by itself, and then you had to go battle someone. That was the worst. Those one-on-one battles, sometimes those were impossible. And I cycled through so many characters before I decided who to go with where I wouldn't die all the time. So I ended up going with like the dwarf and that robot, and that was like the best party that I came up with, and that was what I was able to beat the game with. But I had to experiment so many times because all the other characters that I picked, they would get their ass kicked, and I couldn't continue the game. It was so difficult.
No, it was, it completely had those issues.
Yeah, with the way it's set up and the glitch that made it more difficult on the American side, like this has a really a huge what do you call it? Has a huge it's known. It's very well known for being one of the more difficult Super Nintendo games, or just RPGs in general. And it's kind of funny because usually we were treated to like the easy version of an RPG. The Japanese were like, "Oh, you kids over there can't handle our stuff, so here's Final Fantasy IV easy version, or we'll make Mystic Quest for you little kids because you can't handle our stuff." But then we accidentally got the hard version with 7 Saga, and we're like, "Oh my God, we're sorry. Stop it.
We're so sorry."
So there is a patch out there called the 7th Saga Redux, and weapons and armors have higher attack defensive powers and attack magic resistances. Attack magic has higher spell power. Some guys learn some spells. Monsters are weak and strong against different elements. This seems like they've added stuff, though, to the game in that patch.
Yeah, it sounds more like they tweaked the American version rather than based on
experience in gold is doubled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they were able to get it tweaked so it's a little more of a fair and more balanced experience, then however they had to do it, I guess it works.
Spells are learned a little bit earlier, and there's an enemy that drops unique best weapons and armors for all 7 characters.
I don't know where it was that I heard this from, but I remember hearing about this game. I want to say it was around the time where I was learning about Chrono Trigger, because I think it was about that point where I was starting to learn about more Super Nintendo RPGs, and this was one that, one of the first things I heard is like, oh, there's this really difficult game called the 7th Saga, and it's just brutally difficult and blah 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 blah. But it wasn't until I started seeing videos, I think just actually last year or the year before, that I found out about that change where they actually made the American version more difficult, which that was definitely surprising to hear, especially after the points that Pendy just made a little bit ago with the like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and things like that.
They did not respect us at the time.
No.
Not at all.
It's funny that that game is infamous for basically that, but when I was a kid, I enjoyed Mystic Quest.
Oh no, I don't blame you. It ended up being somebody's a lot of people's it ended up being a starter RPG for a lot of people, which is what its purpose was.
Yeah.
To get get kids in America into RPGs and that kind of thing. But
right.
Yeah, they were just they didn't really respect us that much. Like, these Americans can't handle our RPGs; they're too hard for them. So like, here's all the easy versions of stuff and things like that. So that's whatever.
All right, so you've heard all of us talk about a game so far tonight, and you've heard Bururian speaking tonight. But Bururian, just wanted to check one last time. You do not have like one or two specific games to talk about?
Honestly, anything that I probably would have talked about, most people had already selected. I mean,
you're here for the color commentary?
I'm here for the color commentary. There's always Lufia. I mean, we didn't particularly talk about Lufia. I don't have any of the hard facts on it, but it was actually one of the first Super Nintendo RPGs that I played, even before like Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy or anything like that. I had gone over to a friend's house, and this was one of those kids that he had every video game under the sun. His parents bought him everything. So we're flipping through it, and I see we're flipping through all his games, and I see the cover art for Lufia, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool. What is this? We boot it up and we play it for the first hour, and it was like a Taito RPG, if I remember right. Taito originally developed this one, which is now owned by Square Enix. All is consumed eventually by Square Enix. I don't know. It's a very charming RPG. It's different from everything else that was out on the Super Nintendo at the time.
I know it had puzzle elements to it.
It kind of did. It was also a very slow RPG. Like, movement on the maps were slow. Movement in dungeons were slow. Battle was slow. Battle was also very hard because in the very beginning of the game, you could get floored by like frogs in like some of the first areas if you were not careful. I do remember playing these back to back one summer. Yeah,
probably right around the time that I did Chrono Trigger, and I mean the stories were pretty cool because didn't the first game open with like four heroes defeating something?
Yeah, so the very beginning of the game is the legendary heroes defeating the legendary bad guys, and 100 years have passed, and you are the descendant of Maxim, the legendary hero. And the floating fortress has arisen again, and the Centrals are returning, and it is up to you to stop them from returning. I believe in another side quest I talked about the Game Boy Advance Lufia, which kind of does the same thing. Like, all of the Lufia games, except for the second game, are kind of like, hey, the Sinstrels are coming back. You got to deal with that. But it's really interesting because the first game is technically a sequel to the second game, but it came first.
Yeah, in the second game, you are the four heroes.
Yeah. So you already know the ending of the game beforehand because you experienced it in the first 10, 20 minutes of Lufia 1. But yeah, the translation also wasn't so hot for that game. It kind of had a Breath of Fire kind of translation to where it was super simplistic.
That's really funny because we were just talking about that on the Discord.
And the only knock that I have against the combat system for it, it's really cool because when you're in combat, you've got your four characters, you've got like little sprites of them at the bottom, so you can see them do little attack animations and little spell animations and stuff like that. And as it rotates through your characters, you get to choose what you want to do, and you have to use the D-pad to kind of select which way you're going to do. Instead of like rotating through a menu, you push up if you want. You push up and A if you want to attack, down and A if you want to defend, left, right and A if you item, and so on and so forth. And
that is one of the definitive things I remembered about those games. Like, there was no battle menu necessarily.
Also, once you input a command, there was no going back. That was the rough part. So if you go, crap, I selected the wrong spell. Also, like, because of the poor translation, you had no idea what the spells did if you didn't know to push the X button when you're hovering over any spell, because then it tells you what to do. I didn't know that for like 10 years until someone goes, wait, can't you just push this button, and it's like, why didn't I think of that? But it's been a while since I've gone through it. I actually own a cartridge of this one. Been trying to get a second or a copy of the second game for forever and ever, but that's one of the expensive ones. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the team that did Lufia really ever did anything else after they did the 2 Lufia games, other than remaking, I think, Lufia 2 on the DS.
Yeah, not really sure. And yeah, you did. I remember you talking about this on our Game Boy episode.
Yeah, I talked about The Legend Returns, which is like 100 years after the first game. So it's like 200 years after Lufia 2. Oh yeah, that's right. The company that made this was Neverland. You might know them as the people who make Rune Factory these days.
Woohoo! Wow, they're not. Wait, are they still around, or is that the one that died?
They went defunct about a decade ago.
They died after Rune Factory 4. That was their swan song.
Yeah.
I believe Marvelous has now taken over the Rune Factory IP.
Yes. But
hey, good job though.
I'm just kind of flipping through what they've done, and yeah, most of the stuff they did was either Rune Factory or Lufia.
All right.
So I've played. Well, I haven't played these, but you were saying that in the first game, you have you see this big battle from the past, and then that ends up being the heroes that you control in Lufia 2.
Yes.
Okay. Is that what that made me think of? That's what I would like to see as like a spin-off game from Dragon Quest XI, because those legendary heroes that you get to see their story throughout the game, I would love to see those play as those heroes, even though you know what's going to happen. I would like to play as those heroes in like a side game.
Absolutely.
Play as those guys.
Dare put that thought in my
cool.
head. That sounds so cool.
I thought that once
cool.
I beat the game, I was like, they should do a game with these guys too. I would love to play as these people.
Dragon Quest 12 confirmed.
But eventually Taito got absorbed by Square Enix because they just, I think, outright bought the company. So, yeah, that's my little tidbit about Lufia, I guess. Anybody else?
All right, we love having you for color commentary.
You're here to make fun of us. That's what it's all about, man. We got to have that smart ass on here.
Well, we can always go back to talking about Chrono Trigger. We could spend an entire episode on that one for me.
Oh boy, we probably could have. But
or better yet, a spoiler cast for Chrono Cross.
Oh, that'd be fun.
We need to make sure we go into all 30 whatever characters' backstories, and
I think it's more like 50,
lack
right?
thereof.
60?
Actually, there it's 55 characters.
There you go, 55.
Oh my God.
There are 55 characters. No, I don't know if it's actually that much, but there is like 40. It's like 45 or something.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Don't worry, some of the character stories are really short. It's just like, this character exists because of that's all their story. That's all.
He's an alien and he's here for fun.
My favorite one is a man goes into the forest to find a legendary mushroom. You meet up with him and he finds it and he eats it and he becomes the mushroom and he just goes, all right, let's go. And that's his backstory.
Yeah, I love it because he'll just be like, you know what, you caused this you made me turn into this mushroom. I'm coming with you.
I could be the heckler on that episode. Though I will say, man, it has such a good soundtrack, that game. That's the one thing I was like,
yes, yeah.
It's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard for a video game. It was very impressive.
I got a story about that soundtrack, but I'll save it for that episode.
But you know what the crazy thing to me about Lufia is the complete lack of, it's in Square Enix's catalog, and they have remade one game and only re-released one game, and that's they remade Lufia 2 for the DS. They turned it into an action RPG.
Ooh.
So no random battle, so it's like swinging stuff on the field. It didn't do too hot, but they had the original developers come back and do it. So there was that at least. And then the re-release of the Game Boy Color game on the 3DS eShop. But other than that, Lufia 2, and then the Game Boy Advance version have never had a re-release of any kind. Like not even like emulation, not even like on a virtual eShop or something. Who knows why? If they did it, people would buy it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that I remember hearing about this series, I've watched a little bit of a Let's Play of the first game, but with the second game in particular, I remember hearing about how there was this really long dungeon in it called like the Ancient Cave or something like that.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. It's
And,
really cool because it's like 100 floors.
Jeez. But I remember hearing about this, and I remember specifically because they talked about how, I guess in the Western version of the game, specifically like the one that came out here in the US, apparently there's a glitch on the last floor that like totally messes up the tile palette and makes everything look like a big garish mess. Meanwhile, like I guess in the Europe and Japanese version that, you know, it looks like it's supposed to and everything. But if you play the US one, like it looks like this, like someone kind of threw up on the screen basically.
That's funny.
And I've seen, I'll have to look up, see if I can find the clip of it, show you guys in our chat. But if you, for anyone who's listening, if you go to the YouTube channel HC Bailey and look up his Lufia 2 playthrough, go towards the end of the playlist and there should be a video for that, like for the end of the cave, and you'll see what we were talking about then. It looks, it's really funny to look at. I'll just put it that way.
Nice.
All right, everyone. It is time to cycle through us all again. Pendy, you want to go with your second game?
Sure. I'm going to go with Secret of Mana. That's going to be the next game I'm talking about. This came out in Japan in August of 1999, and we got it in North America shortly after in October of. Did I say 1999? I think I meant.
You did.
Sorry, 1993. It'd help if I write some better notes. But it came out in North America in October of 1993, and then they actually threw Europe a bone, and it came out for the PAL region in November of 1994. It would also go on to be released for future systems such as various mobile platforms, the Wii, and the Wii U Virtual Console, and it would become part of the Switch compilation that would have all the Seiken Densetsu games, 1, 2, and 3, because this is actually, Secret of Mana is actually called, in Japan, Seiken Densetsu 2. There's actually a whole big thing with the naming convention when it comes to these games that I'll go into later. But eventually, they made a full-blown remake for the PlayStation 4, and also was on Platty's favorite system, the Vita. It's, like I said, in Japan, it's called Seiken Densetsu 3. Seiken Densetsu 1 was called Final Fantasy Adventure out in the West, out here. It was part of Square's many schemes to increase sales through deceptive naming practices that they're famous for. Secret of Mana was actually, I looked this up, Secret of Mana was actually initially advertised as Final Fantasy Adventure 2 before they made the switch to Secret of Mana. Me personally, I've only played the Super Nintendo version so far. I've not played the remake yet, though I've heard that it has some pretty cringy voice acting to it. Have you guys heard about that?
I played the PS4 version, and I got through about 20 minutes of the English dub for the game, and once you select your dub, you can't select it unless you start a new game. So I got 20 minutes in, and I'm like, I cannot deal with this. So I restarted and went with the Japanese dialogue.
Boy, I guess they didn't learn their lesson then, because in the Trials of Mana remake that came out last year, that had really bad English voice acting too.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like, you know, I've played video games forever, and I was, played video games back during the PS1 era where we had some really, really bad voice acting back then when they were first trying to figure everything out, and it wasn't, popular yet. But these days, like most video games for the, especially major releases, it has decent voice acting. There's a lot of veteran actors out there that they go to that do a lot of anime and video games, stuff like that. But it's just weird when you hear about like a major release like that getting like super bad voice acting, which it apparently did. I don't know why. I guess they cheaped out on it. But I've only played the Super Nintendo version. I'm not like a super fan of the game, but I do enjoy it a lot. But the real reason I picked this one was because of the strong multiplayer memories I have of this game with my little brother. This game's an action RPG. Battles are fought in real time, and you will eventually have two other party members that join you on the screen. You can bring up a ringed menu screen system where you get a variety of spells based off various elemental spirits that you rescue throughout the game. You also get 8 different weapons that you'll eventually get 8 different weapons that you get to cycle through, and you can upgrade throughout the game as well. But next is where the game gets really fun to play, at least in my opinion. And based off of my experience. You can have two other people join in and control the two other characters with the Super Nintendo version. I would have been around 14 of the time of release of this game, and my brother would have been 10. Exactly. We were actually 4 years apart to the day, born on the same day. Kind of a weird coincidence kind of thing. But we played this game together from beginning to end, or at least once you get a second character where he can jump in. And it's one of my favorite memories playing games together with my brother when we were growing up. It's a fantastic adventure, and it's so fun to play co-op. I have the Switch compilation that has this game, and I hope to play it with my soon-to-be wife when she moves to America in the future. I bought it just specifically for that, so that we can do that as well, because she's quite the gamer herself. So that's why I love this game. It's just the co-op is just so much fun for this. What do you guys think of it, for those who've played it?
Like I said, I've unfortunately only played the PS4 version. Now that I have a Switch, I would like to get the that compilation collection that they did, so I can play through the original Super Nintendo version.
Yeah, and it almost didn't come out here, because when it first came out in Japan, there was, as far as I knew, there was no plans to bring it to America, and it was a very long time in between when it came out in Japan and it came out here. I was really mad about it, because I was like, oh man, this would be perfect. It's like it's ports of the original games. It also has Seiken Densetsu 3, which we didn't get originally, though you can emulate it, and there's an English patch for it. But I was like, oh, this is great, and I'll get a Switch. And I was like, what? And then I was like, no plans to release it. And I was like, well, I'm not buying a Switch then. Screw you, Nintendo, if you're not going to release it. One of my favorite games. But eventually they did, and now you can get it, and it's wonderful.
I think that might have been more Square Enix being Square Enix than.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
But I get what you mean. I know that was what was it? That was announced that they revealed in like E3 2019 that collection and the remake of Trials of Mana was coming over here.
Yes, I remember.
But I remember because that day I had to work, and I was like getting updates like throughout the day when I could check my phone. And I remember that was one of the surprise announcements that a lot of people were really excited about, that we were getting that collection of Mana.
Came out of nowhere.
That was a game that nobody thought was going to come over. So.
Nope. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, they changed their minds. It's great." It was like Dragon Quest. It was like Dragon Quest 7 on the 3DS all over again. Like we didn't think we were going to get it, and then boom, surprise! Here you go.
Yeah,
man, I still remember where I was standing when I found out about that. I mean, talk about presidents get killed. That's where my parents remember where they were when Kennedy got shot. No, I can remember where I was, what kids were in my classroom during the club that I had that day when I found out we were getting Dragon Quest 7.
It's awesome.
I think I was sitting at work when it was for me for that.
I think I was I think I was going into my fall break from college at that point, like at the Nintendo Direct where they revealed that, and I remember seeing that announcement. It was just like, oh my god! But yeah,
didn't they announce both of those back to back? Didn't they do 7 and 8 basically at the same time?
Sort of. So 7 3DS came out here in September 2016, while Dragon Quest 8 came out in January 2017. So they were about 4 or 5 months apart.
Oh, you were going to say something about Secret of Mana?
Yeah. So I have not played Secret of Mana. I've heard plenty about it. And when I saw that collection of Mana was announced, it's like, oh, that'd be a cool game to, pick up for my Switch and, give them a chance. Especially because I had really wanted to try playing Trials of Mana, or, before that it was known as Seiken Densetsu 3, because I had heard so many good things about that one. And I had originally planned to play the fan translation at some point, but then with the, the official collection coming over, I wanted to support that. So I picked up the physical copy at one point at Best Buy, and I haven't beaten Trials of Mana yet, but I've really enjoyed it, even though it got really annoyingly frustrating because of how the enemy difficulty was going up. But it was still really fun, and the AI, I was afraid it wasn't going to be that good because it's more of a multiplayer kind of RPG, action RPG sort of thing. But maybe just a Secret of Mana that they were just still figuring out that sort of AI, because I haven't had too much troubles when I've at least played Trials of Mana with the AI characters that I have.
No, I played I emulated that in college and played it with the fan translation, and I played that solo, didn't play it with anybody, and it's not, the AI is not that bad. So even playing one player, it was a very, very fun game.
Mm-hmm. I will say too that even though I haven't listened to the full soundtrack of Secret of Mana or Trials of Mana quite yet. I will say that they do have very unique sounding OSTs. In a good way, they sound unique, because it was kind of the sound you didn't expect, at least from, in my opinion, it wasn't what you expected to hear sound-wise from a Super Nintendo game, and I think that really works in its favor.
I totally agree with that. Like, nothing about what I've heard from that game led me to believe it was going to be like what it was, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I get what you mean. You know, you get sort of, because you kind of get a picture in your head when you hear songs before you might see what it connects to for a game. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, because I obviously haven't played Trials of Mana yet, but I've listened to some of the music on YouTube, and then, you know, I watched trailers of it, and I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting at all.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, seems like the secret's out of the bag on that one. So, Yangus, what are you going to talk about? Snuffleupagus?
No, I don't feel like that. I feel like instead teaching you guys the secret of romancing.
We already know.
This could be a bad thing to talk about, but
Pendy's getting married like any day now. He knows the secret.
Bring the tips, man.
Let me
I
tell
need
you.
the hot tips.
These are the tips.
Let's go.
Okay. I am the love guru. Here's your advice.
Get your notepad ready, Pendy.
Okay. So yeah. For my second game, I am going to talk about Romancing Saga 2. This was a game that originally released on the Super Famicom in Japan back in the early 90s, I believe 1993, if I have my date right. But the game did see a worldwide release in 2017 on various systems, thanks to the remake it received, which
Yay.
was... I'm sure Platy is getting fun flashbacks with this game as I talk about it. So this is a game that focuses on generations of the Varenes Empire, beginning with Emperor Leon and his sons Victor and Gerard. Gerard being the one that you eventually control. You actually start the game by selecting between a man and a woman, who you will later find out are the final emperor/empress respectively. And rather than the game actually starting you with this character, it actually does a Dragon Quest IV sort of scenario where you get to see the character for a little bit at the beginning, but then you find out that pretty much the whole game is told through the songs of a minstrel in a bar, or a minstrel in a tavern, who recalls the story of the Varenes Empire, starting with the days of Emperor Leon. Anyway. So you begin with Leon and his two sons, Victor and Gerard, like I said, and eventually you will end with the final emperor or empress, depending on who you chose. The Empire is fighting to stop the Seven Heroes, who are a group of individuals who ages ago protected the world from monster kind, but disappeared once they had brought peace to the world. The group was formed of 7 figures, like I said, and they were Wagnus, Noel, Rockbukyu, Dontarg, Bokan, Subier, and Zinzi. Years later, when monster kind begins to take over the world again, the people call out for the help of the heroes to return, only for the heroes to return as these demonic beasts and with these monstrous forms, and begin to actually take control of all these monster armies across the world. The game has you creating parties for each of the emperor/empress of each generation from various classes. With this game, every time that a generation ends for a character, whether it's you've completed a major event like defeating one of the 7 heroes, or you've fought enough battles, or you've completed enough events throughout the world, you then get to choose a brand new heir to take your place, which can either be from one of the job classes that you've either recruited from the game as you've completed different events, or in like one of my cases when I was playing the game, it was actually give me the option for a character who I had not recruited for a possible job class. The reason why I'm able to do this is thanks to this magic called inheritance magic that Emperor Leon, the first emperor who begins this trend, learned from a wandering fortune teller who was trying to warn him about the 7 heroes returning. So, with each emperor or empress that you pick, you then get to form a party of these different classes. So you have a small selection available at the beginning, mainly those who live within the Kingdom of Avalon, which is the capital of this empire. But as you travel the world and you meet new people and go to new places, you will begin to gain allies from across the world. This includes other rulers from different countries, wandering nomads, various servants and members of your royal army, which will expand as time goes on. You have Amazonian women, deep sea divers, pirates who call themselves traveling merchants of the sea, and members of the different elemental races, including mole men, salamanders, mermaids, and bird people. Heck, you even get to recruit a robot created by an old inventor, so you have a large variety of characters with strengths and weaknesses. A big thing to note with this game is that every character, regardless of what they are or who they are, can become the Emperor/Empress. If your current ruler dies, or if they lose all of their life points, which is one of the gameplay features / stats that you have to pay attention to in a Saga game, you can either choose one of your party members to take up the role of the new Emperor/Empress if your current Emperor/Empress dies, or you'll be able to select a brand new character in the event you get a full party wipe and everybody loses all their life points. This game is all about, taking what you gain from your previous generations, giving it to the new generation that will take over your place, and then helping expand your empire further and further defeating the 7 heroes. So one of my favorite gameplay features from this particular game is that whenever you master new abilities, such as mastering new skills with an axe or new skills with fisticuffs, and you reach the next generation, you're actually then able to impart those skills onto your new characters. So let's say you learn one of the powerful fisticuff skills, Gunyan. You are able to pass that skill on to any other martial artist characters or anyone who you want to, focus on physical fisticuff skills. You'll be able to pass that skill on, provided you learned it in the previous generation. You just have to go into the training hall, talk to the instructors, and they can give you the ability then whenever you need it. You can also gain new formations this way in the training hall, depending on who your current Emperor/Empress is. So it's always a good idea to try out new rulers from the various classes, because you might gain a brand new powerful, a brand new formation that's either really good for offense, one that's really good for defense, one that's good for magic. Just kind of depends on who you have as your current lead. So as you play the game, you will explore new places, which you'll be able to learn about thanks to NPCs or by completing different story events. Big thing to note with this game is that speaking to characters is very important. This can change what you can create in the city of Avalon, or, and more importantly, where you can end up going. You can create a lot of things in the city of Avalon, such as a magic institution to master various spells. You can create a small hometown for all of your allies who live outside Avalon, so you can easily recruit them without having to go to their hometowns. There's an orchard that you can create in order to help increase the Empire's revenue. And there are some other additions, such as having a famed inventor near Avalon creating inventions like a bridge. Oh, and I mean, he can make a robot too, but it's not as cool as the bridge. I mean, it's a bridge.
Until the bridge goes away.
Yeah, because it gets destroyed by a narwhal.
Yep.
So this is one of those games that it was definitely different for its time and different even still now. Because this game, at least as far as I would call it, it's like a choose-your-adventure book, as you will receive different outcomes depending on how you approach different situations and events. For example, the one that always sticks out in my mind is when you're going after the great hero of Bokan out on the Great Plains, which is far to the east of Avalon. You will encounter this strange land ship, and the nomads that live on the plains will be like, well, there's this boat that all these monsters keep coming from. We're not really sure what's doing out here in the middle of the Great Plains, but it keeps, taking our livelihood, which is all these plants and herbs that we use to sell and help keep our village alive. So you speak to the elder, he'll tell you about what's going on, and then you can either try and attack the ship head on, or you can tell him to wait because you'll think of a strategy. Now, depending on what you pick, you might end up trying to charge the ship head on. You'll find that the ship begins to move around and monsters become more active, and including taking over the nearby town, which can kidnap you, take you onto the boat that's on the Great Plains, and essentially strip you of all your gear. So you have to try and get through there, try and find your stuff and defeat Bokan from the inside. Or you can recruit a tactician in Avalon via the academy you can create, and he'll come up with the idea to create a ship to act as a decoy in order to lure out Bokan and all of his allies. This will end up letting you go into the ship without having to deal with as many enemies and defeat Bokan while his forces are at their weakest. So your choices in the game can have a really big impact on how events play out, what allies you can get, and where you can fast travel to. Because the more you do to help out all the different nations and countries and everything like that, the bigger the empire grows and the more allies you'll have in your battle against the Seven Heroes. So this remake in particular includes a lot of new story content, such as a brand new dungeon that'll expand on the stories of the Seven Heroes and why they are the way they are. There are 2 new job classes, the Ninja and Diviner. Ninja being a good physical class and the Diviner being a strong magical class that can specialize in shadow magic. And there's some new optional bosses, one of which is just stupidly overpowered and makes the final boss fight look like child's play. And if you've ever played Romancing Saga 2, I'm just going to say the word termites and you'll know just how bad the super boss is from all the other bosses you got to fight. All right, so this is a game that you might have heard Plattym and I talk about a few times in past Sidequest episodes, because Plattym and I tried to race this game, and as we learned, this is one of the hardest games in the Saga series. So,
Oh, yeah.
Well, Plattym, you got about 30 hours or so from this game? Do you remember how much you played?
I was in the 20s. It was somewhere, it probably wasn't 30, but I know I was in the 20s. I got through, 4, 5, 6 generations. I had opened up 70, 80% of the world, and I had defeated exactly one of the the one that you have to beat at the beginning. I had defeated exactly one of the big bad guys, and I was like, oh, crap. I'll be honest, it was that boat. You were talking about the options about the boat in the desert, and there was, I did the option where I chose to go to the boat and I got captured or whatever and was there without equipment, and I had to go in and find the equipment and everything. And man, I must have done that boat so many times, going through, getting everything, and then trying to beat the boss, and I just couldn't do it. And I had to go back to a previous save at one point. I'm like, I can't do this. Because you're in that boat, you can't get out of the boat until you win. And I think that was one of the things that finally just broke me. I was like, I'm making no progress. I podcast every now and then. I'm on RP Gamer's Q&A quest, and Michael on there is got I think the only strategy guide really on Game FAQs about this. I mean, he wrote it like 18 years ago, and like I was trying to get help from him, and that couldn't even save me. Well, I mean, I did have fun for, I was just progressing along and opening up areas and solving the world's little problems. And when it came time to actually get shit done with the big bosses, like I hadn't progressed the right way or enough or too much, because things scale up if you play too long and fight too many battles. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a case, like when you lose all your armor like that if you had a bunch of characters who were specialized in like the fisticuffs and like could use a lot of like the martial arts sort of stuff, you probably would be okay to get through that then, because you'd have a party that could fight with their fists or with like magic users or something. But that I think that is one of the things that, and at least in my experience, I found enjoyable about this game, because you kind of learn as you play and figure out this stuff. So even though like we both started this at the end of 2019, we both kind of went back to it here and there. Plattym did eventually, as he said, he stopped after about 20 hours, especially after he got stuck on the boat. But I kept returning to the game every now and then, because I personally found this to be a very satisfying experience of a game, because I had that sensation of, wanting to beat the challenges the game threw at me and discover more of this world and its characters. You get a lot of world building as you progress through the game, and you start learning about the different villages and places you go. And you also, you get a lot of world building from the game. And you get a lot of background stories for the Seven Heroes, not only from the new content that's in this remake, but I actually was surprised that, there is content that actually goes over the backgrounds of the Seven Heroes if you're able to reach this village that Oracle from the beginning of the game is from. You get to learn a lot of details about them and about, how they became the way that they did. The experience of this game, and I'll probably get some eye rolls or people chuckling about it, but the experience of this game reminded me a lot of the Dark Souls games, mainly in how you can uncover the game at your own pace, and you get that satisfaction of overcoming the odds and learning the ins and outs of the game's many mechanics.
So what you're saying is that Dark Souls is the Saga Frontier, or Romancing Saga of action games.
I mean, you can interpret it that way if you want, but...
You died.
But I did get that sort of feeling from it, just in turn-based form from the 90s. But one of my personal favorite things about this game is the music. So The soundtrack was composed by Kenji Itoi, who has been who has been the series composer for most games of the Saga series. He didn't do the soundtrack to, I think the only ones he didn't do the soundtrack to was what was it? He didn't do Saga Frontier 2 and Unlimited Saga, but he did come back to do Saga Scarlet Grace when that eventually came out in like late 2015 for the Vita. And he's done a lot of the mobile game soundtracks too, all the original stuff. What I really like about Romancing Saga 2's soundtrack is that I absolutely love the sound chip used for the game, is it reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy IV's Super Nintendo soundtrack. And I have to give major props to him, not only for his compositions, because there really are some nice songs within this game, but I also just really enjoy that particular sound font, because I thought Uematsu used it really well in Final Fantasy IV, and his team really made a lot of use of that in the original Super Nintendo version of the game. And I, again, really like that with this remake that I've played, they kept that original soundtrack intact and didn't try and change it up or, modernize it with new synthesizers or anything like that. I really enjoyed hearing his work from the rest of the series since I fell in love with 2's soundtrack. And really, Romancing Saga 2 was a game that, this was the first Saga game that I played, not counting Legend of Legacy, since that was sort of a spiritual successor game when that series was in the dark. And along with Saga Universe, Romancing Saga 2 really helped me become a big fan of the Saga series as a whole. Playing the other games from this series has been really great, and when we're recording this right now, tomorrow is going to be the release of Saga Frontier Remastered, which I'm looking forward to playing. And
actually, that should be prepared like in an hour or two.
We'll see what happens. But
I better go on and buy that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. But I really gotta owe that, and finding out about this series and learning more about it, and basically fall in love with the whole thing, thanks to Romancing Saga 2. And even though this game is probably not one that I would recommend to a ton of people, it's more so one of the games where I'd be like, look up some gameplay, see what you think of it, and if it looks like it catches your eye, then you'll probably really enjoy it. This is one that Plattym and I took a total chance on. I absolutely ended up loving the game, even though it frustrated me so many times at different points. But it was a very satisfying experience, and one that after I got done with it, I was so excited that I finally, I had that real feeling of excitement from beating it, because it had been such a struggle.
Yeah, you sent me a bunch of messages like, oh my god, I think I'm going to be near the end of this. Like, you were messaging me a lot when you did finally do that. I was like, holy cow, you did it.
Yeah,
you did it.
It was very, it's one of those times where I beat a game and I felt like a very genuine feeling of excitement from it. Like, I can't believe I beat it. It's so good. But I really enjoyed that ending for as long as the struggle was too. It had a very satisfying ending, some great last songs you get to hear in the game. And, I don't know if I'm going to replay it soon, just because of other games I want to get to, but I would definitely love to replay this game at some point in the future with a fresh file and try different party formations or try different stuff and see if I can get stuff that I didn't see in the original game, whether it's event or in my original playthrough, whether it's new events or new skills or whatever have you. It's definitely a game that's going to be a little hard to get into, but if you're looking to try a new RPG series and you see this game on sale, give it a go. Look up some gameplay first, see if it catches your eye, and if you like what you see, give it a chance. I did, and I absolutely loved it.
Well, Yangus, if you can't get back into Romancing Saga 2, don't forget there's always 2 others.
So, Pendy, I hope you were taking notes.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I have not played this game, but I took extensive notes while you were talking, so I am now ready for my honeymoon. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'm good to go.
Remember, some of those points will really help you out, if you know what I mean.
Remember, you just got to keep going until you glimmer.
Yep. Got to get those glimmers, man. And don't worry, if you die, someone new will take your place.
Oh.
You are replaceable.
Everyone is.
I do enjoy, though, in Romancing Saga 2, that if you're doing too well, the game will just go, all right, you're done with that Emperor. Time for a new one.
Oh yeah, there was definitely a generation or two. I felt like I was rocking it, and
then the game forces you onto a new person.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was first playing the game, I messaged Plattym at one point, and I'm like, when am I going to go to another generation? I feel like I can't get anything done with my current guy. And then eventually I must have finally kicked the horse hard enough, or beat the dead horse hard enough, because then it finally is like, here you go.
Oh, that with me for Gerard, like out of the gate, I was destroying everything left and right because my light magic for some reason was just like overpowering everything. And the game just eventually just went, yeah, we're going to give you someone real weak now.
I will say it is nice, though, that, even though when you take over a new emperor, they can be kind of weak, that the nice thing is that all of the strengths and abilities and everything that you learned from your previous emperor will go on to the new ones. So you will have to do a little bit of retraining, but at least you don't lose every single thing,
Yeah, well, you know what? For one single generation, when the Switch happened, I went, oh God, where's all my good equipment? And it gets placed into the armory. And if you don't go and look there, you won't know it's there.
Yeah. It is nice, though, that the game doesn't make you lose all that stuff, though. That's what I was really afraid of. It's like, oh no, I lost that stuff when I changed over generations. But thankfully, like even with the original release, they were like, don't worry, we have this stuff saved for you. You just got to look in your castle.
Yeah. Yeah, the gear from your previous emperor that's been sitting here for, looks at calendar, 200 years is still in the back for you to use.
All right, talking about somebody who uses his gear over and over and over again, let's get going with a little bit of Mario action here. Drippy.
Yeah, so we talked about an Enix game in Actraiser, so next I'm going to be talking about Super Mario RPG, which is one that I'm sure whenever, somebody saw the title of this episode, I'm sure that they knew that this was going to be here. It was actually released the same year, 1996, in Japan and North America. North America was, I think, like 3 months later. Was developed by Square, published by Nintendo, and this is just like, it's a really fantastic, it's a quick, well-paced RPG. I was looking how long to beat, has it at 17 hours to complete. Beat the game, and then if you want to do some completion stuff, you're looking at like 26 hours. It's just a really fantastic game. I think it was made by, the 90s Square. So it's kind of like an old school Dragon Quest or an old school Final Fantasy, and I think that's what they were going for. Everybody knows the story of Mario. There is no story. So this one changes it up a little bit, where in the beginning of the game you play as Mario, and obviously it's turn-based battles, but you're going to rescue Peach from Bowser, and a new villain comes in. It's just a giant sword, which is really weird, called Smithy, and he basically takes over Bowser's castle.
No, wait a minute, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's not Smithy.
What's that?
That's not Smithy.
Oh, no? Okay, yeah. See, it's been a while. Anyways, a giant sword comes down. And so, you're basically trying to get back to Bowser's castle to free it from this giant sword. What is the sword's name? Just so I can, remember.
Oh, boy. If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
Smithy is the final boss, right?
Yeah,
okay,
Smithy is the final boss.
That's what I was getting confused.
Hold on. The sword is Exor. Exor the sword.
Yeah. So the game is actually really linear, and I think there's a lot of Mario aesthetics. You have kind of, I want to say, the game's broken into towns and sections, but you're going from them like as you would on a world map in like Super Mario Bros. 3, where you're selecting individual places. You're not walking around in sort of an open world. Eventually, everybody, the characters are really good. People talk about Mallow, who's a marshmallow kind of thing that thinks he's a tadpole, but whatever. Geno, a lot of people talk about, and they say they want in Smash, but yet they've never actually played Super Mario RPG. I didn't claim to want Geno in Smash until after I finished it. I think he would be a really cool addition. That's off topic. So it ended up spawning the Paper Mario series, and I do prefer it more than the newer Paper Marios like Thousand Year Door and stuff like that, just because there's more variation to battle. It uses the sort of time-based blocking and improving of your attacks. The only thing I didn't like was there's not really a lot of feedback. There's stars pop up when you do block. You can tell when your attack is more, but I really felt like I didn't get a lot of feedback when I perfect blocked or, perfect attacked. But the game, the battles are fun. Your standard turn-based, your physical attacks, your magic item, and stuff like that. The game, it gets a little bit easy towards the end when you get, Mario, Bowser, and Peach in your team, because Mario is kind of your all-around. You actually can't take Mario out. He's kind of your all-around hero type character. Bowser's more of your tank, your damage dealer, and Peach is your healer. But there's actually 2 items you can get. They're the same item, I believe called the Heavy Shell, which basically, if you stick it on Peach, she doesn't take really any damage, and she's just safe to just sit back, heal. And it's actually Mario's ultimate weapon. So you have him attack, and Bowser attack, and Peach heals, and you're fine. So because of this, I felt like I was under-leveled, and when I got to the final boss, I actually had a pretty hard time because you go through a series of battles right before you get to him, and you really gotta use your strategy with him, using different types of magic and attacks and stuff like that. I really enjoyed the game. It just feels like a comfort food, 16-bit RPG, and the art style is hit or miss for me. The game is in an isometric form, or an isometric view, and because it's a Mario game, of course there's going to be platforming. So platforming in an isometric viewpoint doesn't really work when you need to really be precise, so that can get a little annoying. And jumping on enemies to get, an attack start or whatever. But yeah, it's just a really fantastic old school game. It's on the SNES Classic. That's where I played it. I believe it's on the Wii U Virtual Console for all 5 of you listening that have one. I'm one of you. And I looked at a cartridge. I looked into getting a physical cartridge. It was like $100, so that was a little bit too much for me to, replay it. If I do want to replay it, I would just play on the SNES Classic. But I know, like I said, I know a lot of people are probably expecting to see this game come up when we were talking about these kind of games, so I'm sure you guys have some thoughts on it.
Oh, this game is fantastic. I'm reading a little bit of background on it, and it's fascinating because apparently they made this game because of RPGs not selling that well outside of Japan. It was their attempt to kind of see if they could get them a little more popular by attaching a huge star to it, like Mario. And Miyamoto was really involved with the guidance of how the game went as well. And it's actually sold very well in North America. It exceeded their expectations and was in the hundreds of thousands of units that they were able to sell. So that's pretty cool to see. I really loved this game at the time. I loved playing as Bowser. That was like one of the big appeals to me. It's like, ooh, I get to play as Bowser. I get to play as a bad guy. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was absolutely a staple in my party when I was playing it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, that's the only complaint I have about this game, because it's such a great game. The only complaint was just how short it was, which you mentioned before. Like, it was like over in a flash compared to most standard RPGs that were like 30, 40 hours at the time, and it was just over too soon. I was like, no, I need more. I want more. But yeah, it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I feel, just for me, I'm getting sick of even 40-hour RPGs. So when I saw that, 17 hours to be like, a Square Enix RPG, like, sign me up, dude. I was all for it.
Yeah, this was one that I knew about when I was a little kid because growing up, I was really big into Mario on that playing of the Nintendo 64 games. And I remember when I would go to the video store that I would rent games from on weekends, I remember seeing this game on the shelf, but it was for the Super Nintendo, which we didn't have. But I always remembered this game, and I always had it in the back of my head because of that, because of the cover of the Super Nintendo version, or of the Super Nintendo game, excuse me. So years later, I found out, it was around Labor Day 2009, that Nintendo was going to release it onto the Virtual Console for the Wii. And I kid you not, I played through that game 3 times in a row once it released.
Wow.
I was so excited to not only get like a brand new Mario game to play, but one that I had remembered seeing as a kid and was like, oh my gosh, I remember this. I remember seeing this game. And one of my friends in high school, who was a grade ahead of me, he had told me that he had played that game. He had told me that at some point before it was released, and said, oh yeah, this is a a really good Mario game, you should come over to my house and check it out on my Super Nintendo. Never did, but I ended up, getting the Virtual Console release. I've seen his copy of it. I just never played it. I should clarify that. But he did let me borrow his old strategy guide for the game when it came out, and I would look at it just to see the art or if I was really stuck on something. But the game is pretty straightforward to get through, and when you're playing it back to back, you remember stuff. But the cool thing is that with this game, even when I replay it nowadays, I find out some new little tricks or something new that I didn't realize. One of my favorite things is that whenever you do pull off a perfect, button time press for an attack, like a regular attack, the animation will change, so it's a little more elaborate, or there's new little touches to it.
Yep. That's true. Mario would punch 2 times, but if you time it perfectly, he hits 3 times. That's right.
Yeah, there's a ton of secret weapons you can find. The one that I always hate trying to get is the Masher Hammer from Mario, because you have to land the jump just right on the Babam, or on the seesaw that a Babam is sitting on, and if you miss, you have to run all the way back up there to try again. But this is a game that I really enjoyed replaying and still replaying it now, because it has a lot of fun characters to it, and it's unfortunately a shame that Square Enix is the ones that hold the rights to a lot of the characters like Geno and Malo and Smithy and all those guys, because I think if Nintendo did have them, we might see them a bit more. We did get to see Geno in we got to see Geno in Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga on the Game Boy Advance. They had a little cameo because people who had been a part of Square Enix went on to form Alpha Dream that helped create the Mario RPG or the Mario and Luigi games. So that's why they were able to get Geno in, but unfortunately they had to take him out from the 3DS remake. Oh. But Geno is one of those characters that some people will sarcastically be like, "Oh yeah, I want Geno in Smash," but he's a character that I do genuinely think would be a fun addition for Smash Brothers, and it would be kind of a cool nod to the Super Nintendo era, both because how with them adding Banjo and Kazooie, for Smash Ultimate in the first round of DLC, that was a big one for Nintendo 64 generation kids, because that's the system I grew up on. So seeing them in the game was holy crap. So I would imagine that seeing Geno in there would be a holy crap moment for people who grew up with the Super Nintendo or played Super Mario RPG as one of their first experiences. I think that'd be a fun addition. But getting back to the game itself, I really enjoyed replaying it, not only because of you discover new things, but it's such an expressive and fun take on the Mario world. The isometric view is a little odd, I'll admit, but I do like it, and I really enjoy the music by Yoko Shimomura. This is one of her first Mario soundtracks that she did, and it's a really good one. It sounds very nice on the system, and you even get some fun little nods to Final Fantasy in this game. If you do one of the little side quests, there's a little girl you can trade with in the mole town, and if you get the shiny stone from her and you take it to one of the last towns at the end of the game, the town where all the monsters live at, you can actually open up a door that'll lead you to a bonus boss called Culex, who's basically a big old reference to Final Fantasy. He even has the Final Fantasy IV boss theme as his battle theme. But
I was going to attempt to do that. I started the side quest where I was trading the girl, and then I was like, I don't think I want to try for the super boss in my first playthrough.
It is a fun battle. It is difficult, but the thing is, I've done that one with and without the lazy shell, which is the ultimate weapon and armor you can get. And the thing is, too, there are a lot of challenges you can do to get some really powerful gear. I've never been able to do this one myself, but one that's a really good item to get for Mario is the Hero Scarf, which is if you can do 100 consecutive super jumps in a battle, you can then go to that monster town and you'll receive the Hero Scarf, which basically gives Mario a big old stat boost and everything if you equip it to him. And then you have other charms that in the game it won't tell you what exactly they do, but you can get stuff like the Quartz Charm or the Ghost Charm that'll increase your speed by 50%. If you have the Quartz Charm, it increases your defense and offense by 50%. Even though there are a few accessory items you can get that may not specifically say what they do, you can do a ton with them. They can really make some of your characters super strong, especially if you power up characters like Geno or Bowser to just be super killing machines with their regular attacks.
And this is probably the first game that I played where they kind of tweaked the turn-based battle system where you had to had those timed attacks. First time that I had seen something like that, and I always appreciate it like, there's nothing wrong with the traditional turn-based, pick a menu, go, you go, you go. But I like it when companies like to attempt little tweaks on that and add a little bit of a flavor to it, like a timed attack, which you see in a lot of the Mario RPGs, or like Shadow Hearts, where you had the ring, where you had to time your attacks, or Legend of Dragoon, where you got all those combo timed attacks that you do. So it's nice to see. So, gives more variety, more spice among all the RPGs that you can play when you can have little tweaks like that to battle systems. So it's fun to play.
Yeah, it keeps you involved too.
Yes.
Where you're
Absolutely.
saying, you're just picking a menu, but you're actually actively doing something, and you need to pay attention to the battle. It makes you want to battle more.
And it's still
Absolutely.
turn-based. It's not like an action RPG, but it's still turn-based, but it has that little bit more to it, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I had recently been playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, and one of the first things that I noticed with the combat was it's very much set up like Super Mario RPG, where you can push your X button to do your normal attack. You can use the triangle button, or in like Mario RPG's case, the X button that you would push to pull up your special abilities for your individual characters. And you even have button presses, so you can help like block out extra damage, or you can push it to increase the damage of your specials. Yep. So like, first thing I thought of when I was playing, that's like, this is like Super Mario RPG. That's so cool. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about playing Yakuza, because, again, it made you involved, and it reminded me of Super Mario RPG. And really, for Super Mario RPG being one of those first, or being the first Mario RPG game to have those kind of button presses, like, they did a very good job with execution on that. There's like one attack that I think is a little wonky to get the timing on, and that's Malo's ultimate spell, which is the starfall one, or it's the meteor fall one, whatever it's called, where he calls down a giant star to keep bouncing on the enemies. The timing on that one I think's a little weird. I've never really been good at that one, but most everything else in the game you can pretty much get it on your first try, and you're going to be like, this is really cool. It does a ton of damage. Now you guys are just making me want to replay this game now.
Well,
you played it enough.
I'm going to be the wet blanket. I never made it past the first star because I always get bored with the game by then.
Oh,
Boo earns.
Here's the even worse part.
Who invited this guy?
Here's the even worse part. I was given a Super Nintendo copy of the game for free.
Can you send me your copy then?
I was gonna say, I know a guy that needs a copy of it. It's me.
We can talk about that.
I call it first.
So, Bururian, I had the same experience as you. I want to say it was 2 years ago. Yeah, I don't think it was at the beginning of 2020, but it was like beginning of 2019. They were getting a group together to talk about it on RPG Backtrack, back before I hosted it, and Phil Willis was the host over at RP Gamer. He was getting people together to talk about it because this is a podcast that I now co-host, but it was co-hosted for like 10 years by Phil and Mike. But it originally was started with a couple old-time RP Gamer editors like 12 years back, and their very first episode was on this game. So I think when it came time to do like episode 201, they were like, they had something special planned for 200, but they were like, 201, definitely, let's go back and recover the game. And I loaded the game up, and yeah, I never got much more than about an hour or two, and it was like, nope, I'm just going to sit that episode out.
It's not because I don't like the game. It's just I tried to play it too late. If I had played this around the time that I played Chrono Trigger, I'd probably hold the same reverence for it that a lot of people do. But I tried to play it in my late 20s, and I was in like a severe RPG/video game burnout phase. So it just kind of bounced off me.
Oh yeah, I could see it where you'd then be like, no, I don't want to do that, man.
And see, that's how I felt about Chrono Trigger. I think I played Chrono Trigger in my late 20s, and I tried Super Mario RPG in my early 40s. So
Yeah.
I think I might actually give this one a go again, but we'll see.
It is a fun time, and I will say that if you do end up playing this one, whether it's you guys or anyone who listens to us, there are some nice mods out there too that'll actually give you some extra challenges and things like that if you're looking for just a little bit more to the game systems and everything like that.
Yeah.
But Super Mario RPG, if you're really not super familiar with RPGs, or if you're just looking for a bit of a different Mario experience, I would definitely recommend this one. Or if you're looking for another RPG experience from the series, definitely check out Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. That's another good starting point for Mario RPGs. But yeah, obviously, I got a lot of love for Super Mario RPG, not only because I like Mario, but I mean, this was such a cool game to play back in high school. Like, it was so interesting to see this side of Mario, this Super Nintendo game that I remembered, but I never had the chance to play. And I'm going to keep repeating myself if I keep going, but I'm just going to say it one more time that I really love this game, and it's one of my favorite Super Nintendo games.
And see, my recommendation for one of the later ones would be Bowser's Inside Story, because I'm such a Bowser nut. Yeah, but like in Bowser's Inside Story, you get to play like gigantic Bowser, and he has these like big, huge like mecha type fights, and part of it's like going literally inside Bowser and trying to figure out what's wrong. So that's a good one to start with too, I think. But I'm biased. I'm very biased. I'm Bowser.
No,
biased.
I've heard tons of great stuff about Bowser's Inside Story. So
it's a good time.
All right, so here's the funny part is I really enjoyed the one that came before it, or not the one that came before it, the one that came after it, the Luigi's Dream Team.
Oh yeah, Mario and Luigi Dream Team.
That's good too. That was good too.
Yeah, that one I like.
They took a lot of those concepts that they started in Inside Story and ran with them in Dream Team. So it was good to see.
Yeah. Dream Team was good, but I'll admit I actually really enjoyed what was it? Paper Jam a lot more than I thought I was going to. I had a hard time finding a copy of that game, but I finally did find one, and it actually made me laugh out loud quite a few times. I think they knew kind of tongue in cheek. It was kind of, it's the same old Mario stuff, so let's just have fun with the script.
Oh, nice. I haven't played that one yet, so that's cool.
I would definitely recommend that one. I know we're kind of getting off topic here, and Play's probably going to bring down the mute hammer any second, but I would recommend Paper Jam if you're looking for another newer Mario RPG experience. It does have a little side mini game heavy at some points, but it is really fun.
All right. Well, since I was apparently threatening,
I could feel it happening in the background. It's like he's gonna.
I was gonna say, do you feel me on the back of your neck? Was it at the 20-minute point or the 30-minute point of that discussion that you started feeling that?
I felt it calling in the end of night. Oh,
that's all right. I let you guys go because that is one of the bigger ones here. We've Chrono Trigger, and that probably are the two most popular of the list that we've got going tonight. Although the last one I'm going to talk about here, it's still going today. It is a series. It started off as genre actually, and it started me, good old Pirate Plattym here, on emulation. As
That's
I
why
sit
you
here,
like the Buccaneers.
oh, look at that! Now you're making connections all over the place.
Oh my God, conspiracy!
Let me shut my Super Nintendo themed new 3DS XL, as I am currently playing Dragon Quest Monsters 2 on it, since that is not a Super Nintendo title. The latest game I'm emulating on there, and talk about my first game emulating. So, like I said, I never brought a Super Nintendo. I never had really much on the Super Nintendo at college. I literally had Madden, and I had good old the 7th Saga. So, I was tutoring some kid, probably 11, 12 years old, in math my senior year of college, and just one day he's like, "Hey man, do you like Super Nintendo games?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've played like 2 or 3." I said, mainly I love a bunch of city building games on the PC. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. And he's like, "Oh, well, if you play on the PC, then you should try to emulate some stuff." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, don't you know about ROMs?" And I'm like, "CD-ROMs? Yes. As a matter of fact, I copy people's CD-ROMs and play their games all the time." And then he's like, no. And this is like 11-year-olds teaching me how to become Pirate Plattym. And he mentioned it, and I was like, I've never heard of this thing. But the first game I download and play is Harvest Moon. The original Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo. And my goodness, I played the heck out of that the second half of my senior year at college. It has all the elements that you find in Harvest Moons today. You plant, and today people are still planting in those little 3x3 grids in Stardew Valley and lots of other farming games. You raise your chickens, you raise your cows. One of the big goals is you want to get married. So I think there's a blue feather you had to find eventually and bring to the person you were choosing to propose to. It had the relationship meters. So you could call this maybe Persona 0, starting way back. I saw Yangus disappeared for a second. I'm like, I better hold that joke off until he gets back in the Skype call. So, but no, Harvest Moon, you could build up your friendship level with townfolk, and if it was one of the people that you could choose to marry, then it was the relationship meter. But just, it was, to me, it was perfect because I had just been playing like 7th Saga off and on for 3 years, but mainly just city building stuff. A lot of the Sierra games, Caesar 2, Cleopatra, I think that was later, but Pharaoh. But I was just in the Sim City and all these ancient build your empire kind of games. And Harvest Moon wasn't like that at all, but it was kind of had those RPG mechanics that I remembered liking, but I was building something. I was building a farm, and it was just so relaxing. It was just so chill, like, okay, I'll water the plants today, or I'll milk the cow today. And if I forget to water the plants in the original game, they didn't die. They were fine. They just didn't grow. It took an extra day to grow. Whoop-de-doo. And there was no hard time limit that you had to do all this in. If you got married year 3 or in the fall of year 1 or whatever, you were fine. It was great, whatever. So, I mean, playing this game the first time did get me into emulation and then back into RPGs, because I then got back and noticed that there was Final Fantasy games that I'd missed. I think Final Fantasy VI was the next game I then emulated, and then realized, wait a minute, what happened to those Dragon Warrior games that I used to like? And holy crap, I could play those. My God, they're out there, and people have fan translated them. And, to this day, one of my 3 favorite series I say all the time is Rune Factory. I'm excited to see if that Part 5 comes out this year as promised. But that goes back to my days with this original game, Harvest Moon, for the Super Nintendo. I played it on the Game Boy version. I've played 1 or 2 other Harvest Moons in the series through the years. Kind of went away with it more when I found out about Rune Factory, and in the mid-early 2000s, Rune Factory came out, and I was more like, oh, I can do some combat and a lot more RPG stuff, alchemy and cooking, and have the whole Harvest Moon experience as well. So I haven't played much more of the series, but I can definitely say the Super Nintendo version of this sparked an interest that, kind of Dragon Warrior had, and not much else. Like I could see like my favorite series. These are kind of the big 2: the farming, simple, chill games, and the hardcore RPGs. Anybody else play any Harvest Moons? Go back to the beginning.
So not Harvest Moon. I mean, well, I've tried. Little pirate Drippy over here. I also emulated the original Harvest Moon on Super Nintendo just to see if I could actually do it. But ever since I spent God knows how many hours in Stardew Valley, I haven't been able to go back to a farming sim. But I feel like the one, the Harvest Moon for a Super Nintendo would be the easiest one kind of to get into, because I feel like it would be like the most basic of the formula. Is that kind of what you think it is?
Oh, it is definitely. Yeah, I mean, it started the whole genre.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Graveyard Keeper. That was another one that I've really enjoyed in the past year.
Yeah, Littlewood is the one that I've been playing recently, and it's less Stardew Valley, more whatever, Dark Cloud and stuff like that. I'm not here to talk about that, but yeah, it's been really hard for me to try to... I tried Rune Factory 4 on the 3DS, never got into it. But yeah, I would love to give the original Harvest Moon a go one of these days. I feel like I would really enjoy it.
So does Farmville on early Facebook Does that count?
Absolutely, it does.
Awesome.
I sunk a lot of time into that, man.
Farmville.
I remember playing that when listening to stuff like Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, wow.
That's a weird combination. I don't know why the hell I did it.
The only farm simulator I played was Rune Factory, and that is recently. Because if you remember, Platy, I was bugging you for a while about, for some reason, I really want to play Farming Sims. And you said Rune Factory 4, and I bought it and played it for about 20 hours and then put it down.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta really be into it to keep going, because a lot of these go for a long time.
Yeah.
And you gotta at some point realize too that, are you going to do everything and play for 100 hours, or do you not really care about the fishing? And because Rune Factory 4, man, you could spend so many days just battling, and so many days just fishing, and so many days working on relationship things, and you're like, okay, well, what do I want to focus on?
So you
there are things that you could just set aside.
So you had unlimited time to do that kind of stuff. You didn't have to worry about, you have to have this done within the first year or something like that, did you?
Not in the original, no. It was just go do it.
But that's the case in Rune Factory 4, though, and like those other ones. You just gotta take your time.
Yeah, you can take your time. Yeah. I thought you asked if there was a time limit. No, most of those. But Stardew Valley, you're supposed to fix things up in 3 years or 2 years?
Yeah, it's 3 years. You get basically graded at the end of your third year. Maybe it is the second year, actually. After 2 years, and the thing that you get is basically you get good job, and you get a statue that gives you some resources every day.
It's not a,
I mean, you don't have
if you don't do it.
Yeah, you don't have to, finish everything, and I mean that's kind of the hard thing. Where if I were to play this Harvest Moon, I wish it was on like the Nintendo Switch Online app, because I feel like these games are so. They can be pick up and play, and if you drop it for maybe even a week, you kind of forget what you were working on, you kind of forget the goals that you had, and it's like, well, at that point I might as well just start over. So I feel like it would be harder for me, having to sit down at a TV for hours on end, and really get back to playing it regularly.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, these are games that I will play for a month or two straight, and then I'm done, and I really can't go back to it because
I've
restarted
Stardew a few times, but never got anywhere as far as I did, in my farthest playthrough.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to see which one that I'm looking forward to. There's one coming up called Sunhaven that I've got my eye on because it has combat. And to me, that is where I've gone. Even just that little bit of combat that's in Stardew Valley, I really, really enjoyed. Even though it was probably
to focus on other than just the crops.
Yep. I mean, I probably spent 5% or less of my total time in that game doing that, but it was there.
Yep.
So, have we milked this episode for all that it's worth?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I could give you some more romancing tips if you want, but I don't know if we should. Could get a little past the PG-13 rate.
I mean, that's what Harvest Moon's about. Half of it's about romancing.
All right, well, here's what you got to do. You got to...
Well, I guess I got more homework to do now before I get married.
Pull that pencil back out.
I only got a couple more weeks, so... Harvest Moon, here we go.
This is what I would tell.
Take care of. So
this is what I would tell Penny. It's like when I start talking, just put a long beat for a few seconds.
Anyone want to throw out a 30-second honorable mention?
Play Earthbound.
That was another one that was another one that I bounced off of, but it was in that same time frame as Super Mario RPG.
Earthbound will have its time, don't you worry.
Oh, yes.
And that's another one I bounced off of trying to play it for the same podcast.
I know. Thought for sure
I did get a lot farther than that one, though, than Super Mario RPG. So
You did. You did get pretty far.
I was in the double digits of hours. 16, 17.
It's not an RPG, but apparently the NHL games are really great. I'd love to get into some of those. A lot of people talk about NHL 94. I know probably not a lot of sports game fans listen to this, but I have 95 that I'm looking forward to playing. Just haven't popped it in yet.
Wait, did you say NHL or NFL?
NHL, National Hockey.
No, NHL 95 was like the best hockey game on that system. I played that so much.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it. I mean, I know it's not an RPG, but just talking about general SNES games, you know.
I've got another Square Enix strategy RPG. 30 seconds. Front Mission. You should go play it. Do you like mechs? Do you like tactical strategy games? This is for you. You control mechs. You move them around the field. You fight other mechs. You have finite weapons that you can use. You have destructible parts on your mechs. So you can destroy arms. You can destroy legs. If you destroy their legs, they can't move more than one square at any given time. If you destroy their arms, they can't use weapons that are equipped to those arms. So it's a lot of actually. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, I love that series.
The first one never got released over here on the Super Nintendo, but they later brought it over on the DS.
I played that.
That's the only way to play the first one. We never got the second one. The third one came to the PlayStation 1. We got the fourth one on the PS2. We never got the PS2 of Front Mission 5.
But there is a translation patch out there for it.
There is. But so we're never going to get an officially finished story for the Huffman Island incident that takes place from Front Mission 1 through 5.
They continue that story and they go so in depth to it. I love that series. I played 3 and 4 back in the PlayStation eras, and I played the DS remake of 1.
Dude,
I love those games.
I love Front Mission 1 so much. And the cool thing about it is, like Chrono Trigger, when they brought it forward to the DS, they added like a kind of alternate story thing from the main antagonist from his side. So great game. You know what? You can even play the game on the Super Nintendo. All of the menus of that game are English except for the actual character dialogue. So, nice. Like at the beginning of the game, when you get kind of like that Star Wars text scroll of the story, that's all in English.
Oh, wow.
But then when the characters talk, Japanese. But then when you're in menus, equipping your mechs and doing all that stuff, everything's in English.
Nice. Yeah, if you like turn-based strategy RPGs, that's a very good series to get into. I highly recommend it as well.
And the music for that game is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it for me.
Well, I think the person telling us to shut up tonight is not me.
It looks like
you check out,
we've got a downer.
Yep, I think Young Gas, was that the way to pronounce it? You know,
who's youngest?
Wait, no, wait.
There's a youngest among us.
There may be a youngest among us.
I banned Young Gas. How did he get back?
I do not know. I am somehow here. Oh, whoa! Who is that? You guys hear that?
Oh boy,
talking?
I heard nothing.
If we're going back in time, 14 days.
Someone call.
I think it's time to go to bed.
It's time for bed.
All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of Slime Time Sidequest. We do want to thank Bururian. Thank you, Bururian.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And thanks for coming up with Lufia on the spot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Drippy.
Thank you again for having me. Always appreciate being here.
Of course, we'll have to get back to you soon for a mother of all episodes.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, soon to be wed Pendy.
Always a pleasure. It's always a great time to be here, and now I'm good to go. I got some good hot tips for my upcoming nuptials. Hot tips.
Got those hot romance and tips, man. But yeah, thank you for being on tonight, guys. We certainly had a lot to talk about. We did some time traveling. We got some romancing tips, and we even did a little harvesting. And as we have learned, this episode is brought to you by Front Mission.
Play it.
Play it now.
Do it.
Don't play that.
Make Bururian happy and go play it, damn it.
Just don't play that PlayStation 3 Front Mission game, Front Mission Evolved. It's awful.
Oh, you know what? You should tell people, Bururian, to play that one game that came out from Square Enix not that long ago where it's set in the Front Mission universe, but it plays nothing like one of those games.
Oh, you mean Left Alive?
Yes.
I don't have enough time in a day to go over why everything is terrible about that game.
Caution, the enemy is approaching.
Oh, boy.
But thank you guys. Seriously, though, thank you for being on and talking about all your games tonight. So it was good talking with everybody about all these different SNES RPGs and Super Nintendo RPGs, whichever your preferred pronunciation is.
Nessers.
Sneezers.
Well, however way you pronounce Patreon or Patreon or, whatever. You notice we only say it one time an episode, and we say it to say we don't ever use it. We're just a bunch of longtime fans that want to speak about the topics we know and love so much. If you happen to like this episode or us quite a bit, and you got some money that you'd like to donate, burning a hole in your pocket, tax refund, stimulus 1, stimulus 2, stimulus 3, whatever, consider sliding on over to the Dragon's Den at www.woodus.com/den. Click on support this site. Woodus has owned and maintained the Dragon's Den fan site for over 20 years now, and I'm sure he'd appreciate any donation. Or you can use his Amazon affiliate link to make any purchases, especially order one of the 17 billion ports of Dragon Quest 11S, or pretty much anything else Dragon Quest related. He's got some affiliate links to it. Doesn't cost you a thing, and a small fraction of the sale will go to support the den.
If you have any suggestions for a future Sidequest episode, Platy and I would be happy to hear from you. You can reach out to either one of us on the Dragon's Den itself, or you can contact us via the Dragon's Den Discord, which you will be able to find links to on the Dragon's Den or through some other, I believe it's available on other places too. You can also reach out to...
Don't reach out to him!
The show has gone off the rails.
That's when we need the censor sound, Platy. You can reach out to Platy on Twitter via his handle Plattym3, I'm sorry. You can contact Platy via his Twitter at Plattym3 and let him know about any suggestions on there too. We have a list full of ideas, so please let us know if you have any suggestions for a future episode.
I'm impressed you got through that. Good
Young
job.
Gas strikes again.
No, he's not here. Shush.
Oh, and on that note, bye everyone.
Have a good night.
Super Side Quest Part 2 complete. Look forward to Snuffleupagus adventures.
This time is personal.
Yes!